So it's been a while since I posted a video because I've been in the middle of a couple of really long books, but I still wanted to take some time and make a little update. So for this video, I'm just going to go over some books I want to read this summer, so my tentative summer TBR, I guess. And then also I wanted to give an update about the books I've been reading, some of my thoughts on them. That's been the Brothers Karamazov and The Iliad. Both are kind of, big ones, but I've really been enjoying them, so I wanted to talk about them. So anyway, first I'm going to go over my summer TBR. So for the first book that I absolutely want to read this summer, sort of the biggest read that I know I'm going to do for sure, that is War and Peace by Tolstoy. And this copy is really cool. I just got it last week. I live in California, and my husband and I took a day trip to San Jose, and there's this really cool used bookstore there called Recycle Books, and they have a huge selection. It was awesome. But I found this really nice copy of War and Peace that I'm so excited about, and I just wanted to show you. It's got like a full color map inside, and it's got like a character guide and everything. So it's a really nice older edition. I think it's like 1947 or something, which I love collecting vintage books. That's like my favorite thing. So I was really excited to find it. I read Anna Karenina for the first time in January, which was my first Tolstoy book, and it like immediately skyrocketed to like the top of my favorites lists of books ever. And it really changed the way that I read and think about reading, because before this year I hadn't really spent much time with classics. And this year is when I got into classics, because that was my goal. I was like, okay, my one reading goal for this year, I really want to read more classics. I say that every year. I'm actually going to do it this year. And so far I have, and I've been having the best time. I love all these classic books I've been getting into, especially the Russian classics. So that's why next I want to jump into War and Peace. And I've been watching some videos, sort of just prepping for it, some discussions of it, things like that. And I cannot overstate. It is impossible to overstate how excited I am about reading this book. I loved Anna Karenina, and I just think I'm going to love this one even more. So I know it's huge, so it'll definitely take me some time, which is why this is the one for sure I know I want to get to, that I'm going to read. And I love Tolstoy's writing. I've been reading Dostoevsky for the first time, and I love his writing as well, but he's much more, Dostoevsky uses a lot of dialogue and a lot of intellectual arguments and things like that in his writing, and there's not so much action in the story from what I've seen as there is actual discussions and like in-depth arguments and conversations and thinking, and it's almost like Dostoevsky's inviting you to think about those things. Obviously that's what he's doing by writing these books, but with Tolstoy, what I felt in Anna Karenina is that Tolstoy very much invites you into things emotionally, and you get into the heads of the characters very much because you're seeing their thoughts as they're going about their day and as they're interacting with people. And so I think the two writers present such different styles of writing, and I love them both, but Tolstoy is by far my favorite. I connect so much with his writing, so I was just so stoked to read War and Peace. Next up on my list, and let me just preface this, I'm going to list a few books here, but I don't believe I'm going to get to every single one of these books this summer. I just like to have a wide range to choose from when I make a list of books that I'm hoping to get to, because I kind of jump around as far as mood reading. It's very hard for me to pick a book and want to stick with it. So I try to have a few options, but War and Peace is for sure. And then the other one that I'm not totally sure I'm going to get to, but I'd like to, it just depends on time and how much reading I actually do, is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. So I said I'm reading the Brothers Karamazov right now. And that's the first one I've read by him, but I've heard, obviously everybody knows about Crime and Punishment, and it's hugely popular. And also I've heard it's actually a bit simpler to get into than the Brothers Karamazov. And I know this one's like half the length. But also I know the gist of the story is about a man who commits a murder, Raskolnikov, I think is his name. I don't know too much else, but I'm really excited to read this one as well, because something about the Brothers Karamazov I'm about halfway through that one. It's really drawn me in a way that I don't there's like an earnestness to Dostoevsky's writing that I haven't seen in any other books before, where you know that he is so genuinely struggling with the things he's writing about and thinking through problems and doubts and questions, and he's so genuine and earnest in his writing. You could just feel it as you're reading it, which makes me really excited to read more of his works, because it's just, I can't put them down or stop thinking about them. So I really hope to get to Crime and Punishment as well, but not sure on that one. Third on my list, I'm definitely going to read this one as well. Even if I only read 2 books this summer, I'm going to read Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. This copy is actually my brother-in-law's copy. He wanted me to read it because he loves G.K. Chesterton, and I really like apologetics and theology, so I'm actually really excited to get to this one. I tried to start it a while ago and I just got distracted, but I want to get this back to my brother-in-law, and also it was really nice of him to, let me borrow a book he loves, so I want to make sure I can talk about it with him. So I'm going to read this one. I will say from the beginning that I read, G.K. Chesterton is very funny, very witty, and very funny, and you don't expect it. Kind of comes out of nowhere. So I'm excited to read this one. Moving away from classics and more and theology, things like that, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, and I have a huge collection of Star Wars books that I have just collected over time, and I really want to read more of them. I've only read a fraction of them. So for summer, I tend to gravitate towards science fiction, and since I'll be reading some heavier classics, I'm thinking while I read War and Peace, I'll have couple science fiction books going to kind of break it up if I need a break. So I have some Star Wars books from my collection that I've chosen that I would like to get to this summer if possible. Again, I don't expect to read all of them, but these are my choices. So these are from, with Star Wars books, if you haven't read any, there's what's called Legends and then what's the canon. So Legends are Star Wars books that were written before Disney acquired Star Wars. So those are now not considered canonical, whereas before they were. And now you have the new canon, which are the books written after Disney purchased Star Wars and have been sanctioned by Disney. So there's a bit of some people hate the new canon, some people like both. It's kind of a big thing, but I don't mind either. I just read whatever because I like Star Wars. So these two specifically are from the Legends, or the expanded universe, what used to be canon. And they are by Timothy Zahn, and I'm really excited about this copy. I just found it at the used bookstore, and it's really difficult to find this specific book in hardback in such absolute perfect condition. It came in plastic wrap, so I'm pretty sure whoever had it before me didn't even open it, or I don't know what, but it's perfect condition. But these two are about Mara Jade, and they're written by Timothy Zahn. Mara Jade is a Legends character that she was my favorite character for years in high school when I would read these Star Wars books. She was always my favorite character. Timothy Zahn has a trilogy. He's a well-known science fiction author, but he has a trilogy called The Heir to the Empire trilogy, I think, or maybe the trilogy's different. But the first book is called The Heir to the Empire. Best Star Wars books I have ever read, hands down. They were absolutely fantastic. They perfectly captured the feeling of the movies. They were so good. And one of my favorite characters from that series that he came up with, he created Thrawn, and he created Mara Jade for that series. And Mara Jade is basically, she's a Sith, sort of, in a way. But anyway, these two books are focused on her, and I've always wanted to get around to reading them. I could never find this one, but I had this one. Now I have both. This one's first, this one's second. So I'm hoping to get to these this summer because I've wanted to read them for so long, and they were just sitting on my shelf. I'm like, I need to read my Star Wars books, so I hope to get to these. It's so much fun to read space opera. I love science fiction, but space opera is by far my favorite subgenre of science fiction. There's just something about it that's so much fun and just so big, and I love it. As far as new canon books, there's two that I've had my eye on that I would really like to get to, and possibly this summer. It is Catalyst, which is by James Lucerno, I don't know. But this one is about the building of the Death Star, and I always thought that would be interesting because the Death Star is just there in A New Hope, so I'd really like to actually read about how it was built. And A New Dawn. So this one is starring the characters Kanan and Hera, and these are two characters from a show that came out years ago called Star Wars Rebels. I watched it forever ago. I don't remember any of it, but I remember I liked these characters. And so this story is set sometime after Obi-Wan sends out the message to all the Jedi to flee, basically disperse and hide, because Anakin has turned to the dark side, become Darth Vader, and was killing all the Jedi. The clones turned against all the Jedi, all that stuff, Order 66. So it's after that time period, well before the start of A New Hope. And I'm really excited because this was the first book in the new canon, and it sort of set the stage for Disney's take on Star Wars. I don't necessarily like where Disney's taking Star Wars, to be frank, but I do think this book will be good because John Jackson Miller is kind of a staple in the older expanded universe Star Wars books before Disney said those weren't canon. So I think this will be a really good read. So now I wanted to give a little bit of an update on what I've been reading because it's been taking me so long and I've been wanting to get a video out, but I just haven't finished a book yet. And I was like, well, I'll just do sort of an update on the halfway then. So I've been reading 2 books. The first one is The Brothers Karamazov, which I've been mentioning, by Dostoevsky. And I knew going into this that this one was going to be like a lot, but I don't think I expected how slow of a pace I would have to take with this book. I'm generally a pretty quick reader, but with this one, it is so dialogue focused and very intellectual and very philosophical and all these things. So I've really been having to take it slow and make sure I'm really thoroughly reading and thinking through what's going on and understanding it. A lot of times I'll read a whole conversation and I'll have to stop for a second and say, okay, what was the main point this person was making? What was Ivan trying to say here? What was his main point with all of this? And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think slowing down so much has actually been really beneficial, because for so long I've read, I guess what I would call fast fiction is what I would consider them, which are books that are shorter and more modern and made for, made to be speedy and kind of keep things moving and keep your interest. And we're taught a lot of times that you have to hook your reader immediately and keep things moving and keep going and all these things. And that is true to some extent. You want the book to be interesting. But what I love about these classics is that, from what I've been reading, is there weren't all these pressures that we have now that are modern pressures. But back then they kind of just wrote stories, and I think there were a lot of rules and suggestions and things that we sort of take now as, oh, that's how a story is supposed to be written, that they didn't worry about back then. So they'd write 1,000-page novels with dialogue and conversations, one conversation that lasts 100 pages. They would do that, and it didn't matter because they didn't have, a book telling them why that's wrong and the 7 steps and the formula for writing a story. So that's something I've come to appreciate about these, and it's really forced me to slow down, think through things, like I said, and read differently. I've been approaching how I read differently. So with this one, I've really been enjoying it, but like I said, I've been taking it slower, and I'm about a little under halfway. I've just gotten through the Grand Inquisitor chapter, which was fascinating, and sort of, I think it's one of the most well-known sections or well-known things to come from this book. And also I'm in the middle of Father Zosima. It's his last day, basically. He's dying, and he's kind of giving his discourse to those gathered around him, to Alyosha and the others gathered around him. And I've been absolutely loving that chapter. I loved the Grand Inquisitor chapter. It was hard to read. So I need to slow down. So with Ivan's discourse, and this will have spoilers if you haven't read this book yet, but so the Brothers Karamazov, to give some context, from what I've read so far and what I understand, a lot of it honestly deals with the issue of suffering and evil and free will, and why God would allow suffering and evil, and why he would give us free will, knowing that we would then fall into sin and cause suffering and evil to other people. Or why would he give us free will knowing that innocent people would suffer? So these are a lot of the questions that they're struggling with in this book. And I find it very interesting because Dostoevsky draws parallels and draws ideas from the Bible constantly. He uses, in the Grand Inquisitor chapter, he's using when Jesus goes into the wilderness for 40 days and is tempted by Satan 3 different times. He uses that and heavily pulls on that for his Grand Inquisitor's the Inquisitor's questions to Jesus in that story. And when Father Zosima is dying and he's talking to everyone in the around him in his room, he's talking all about the Bible and how wonderful Scripture is, and he talks about the story of Job and the great mystery that Job could lose so much, that God would allow that, and that Job would yet still praise God, and that all those things would be restored to Job and more. And it's just interesting. I've been so drawn into the way that Dostoevsky can present both sides of this argument and make them so compelling, but still show that he has such a great love and respect for Scripture and for God and for truth. And that's genuinely what he's seeking, is truth and understanding for a world filled with suffering. And I think that's what's awesome about books like this, is it really forces you to think, and there's so much to think about. I honestly think reading this, I probably would have to read through it 2 to 3 more times to really know exactly what I think about everything and really grasp everything. But that's what makes it timeless, and what's awesome about it is it's so relatable and so much to think about, and there's so much depth that you really can revisit it and still get stuff out of it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the Brothers Karamazov so far, and I hope some of that rambling made sense. but I wanted to talk about some of it because I think when I get to the end, I'll want to make a video obviously discussing it, but there's so much. I don't even know how I'm going to talk about all of it in one sitting. So next, I've been also reading the Iliad at the same time. And I did start this one a while ago. I've just been moving through it kind of slowly. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm surprised just how much I am liking it, because I was always a little bit hesitant since it's in verse but it's not rhyming. I just was never, it was like, I don't know. But I'm really enjoying the Iliad, and I've found that whether it's the pettiness of the gods and the drama between them in Olympus, and you know, meddling with the human battles and meddling with the humans and changing the war, and even just the humans themselves, like the Trojans versus the Greeks, and Hector and Odysseus and Diomedes and Agamemnon, and then Achilles, and how angry and upset and emotional he is. And it's just very interesting to see such a wide display of emotions and of different people with different ideas vying against each other. And you've got this war and all these big, huge, bloody battles. And it's just really, you can see why it's lasted so long and why it's so well loved. And it's interesting to see how many little things you can pick up that's like, oh, like that's kind of similar to this book or this movie or this theme. Like, it's a very influential work, which is obvious, and everybody already knows that, but it's interesting to read it and to see that stuff. And I have to say, there's some parts that I really love, like Hector, when Hector is leaving Troy and for what will probably be his last time, and his wife is like, you're gonna die if you go, and all these things, and he's crying and they're all sad, and his wife, and it's just, I loved that part. And it was funny because his baby, it talks about how Hector's son he's just a baby, and he sees Hector with his big helmet with the horsehair plume, and his son gets scared of the helmet, and so Hector and his wife laugh, and then he takes off the helmet and the baby recognizes him. It's just things like that I wouldn't expect to be in there, little tiny human things that are so sweet and just human. And you see these little aspects of people, or like when people are about to die, this part's not sweet, but there'll be someone about to die and they're just begging for their death, and they say, I promise you this, I have this family here, blah blah blah. It's just interesting. I really didn't expect a lot of what's in the Iliad, and I'm enjoying it. Sometimes I have to take a break because there's a lot, like everybody has to have their history. Like they'll introduce a character and then you'll get like a 2-page long story about who this character is and where they came from and that one time when they did this one thing, and everybody has a title, so they won't say a name without giving some adjectives, like Odysseus the cunning and short or something, you know, like they always have to have some sort of titles to describe each character. But it's been really fun to read, and it's making me excited to read the Odyssey afterwards, which I know is pretty different structure-wise from the Iliad, because the Iliad is a bit all over the place, whereas the Odyssey follows the story of Telemachus, Odysseus, and Ithaca and everything. But I'm very excited to keep reading this one as well. It's been fun, and I think it's a perfect, going into summer, it's a perfect thing to be reading. So yeah. Last but certainly not least, I've been actually taking a class through the Bible Project, which, if you don't know them, they give these amazing free classes, like going really in depth in the Bible, which is awesome. So I've been reading the story of Joseph in Genesis and taking the class, and it's been fascinating because Joseph is a story that I've always loved ever since I was a kid. But the cool thing about the Bible Project class is it takes all the different themes and motifs and ideas that you see in Genesis that are repeated basically throughout the whole Bible. And in the Bible Project class, they really connect all those and show you how they're connected and teach you like, oh, this is calling back to this. And because if you think about it, the Bible is, even if you're not a Christian, if you don't believe in it, it is an incredible work of literature. Like it is fantastic, and the fact that it's all connected is amazing, because all of it's 66 different books, and yes, there's poems and there's histories and there's prophecies, but they are all telling one overarching story. And if you remember that when you're reading it, it makes everything so much more powerful, because you see all these connections and hyperlinks and ideas and repetitions that all mean something. They're there for a purpose. And so that's what makes it so exciting to read, regardless of what you believe. It's a fantastic work of literature, and it's the truth. I believe it's the truth, and I love reading it because I learn so much. But it's fascinating to read, so I wanted to recommend those classes too if you're somebody who's interested in learning more about the Bible for whatever reason. The Bible Project has some fantastic classes that are totally free that go over this stuff, and I'm just spellbound when I watch them. Like, I cannot believe that makes so much sense. That's incredible that's connected, and this character and this character. It's just awesome. So anyway, those are the things I've been reading. That's what I hope to read this summer, and I hope to have more updates for you soon on books I've been reading and reviews and things. It's just been slow because I've been busy and I've been reading the Brothers Karamazov, which is taking me forever. But also I have some new books that I will be announcing soon that I've written that I'm really excited about. I'm hoping to announce my next book at the beginning of June. And that'll be really fun. I have some awesome videos planned for that I'm really excited to share. So anyway, in the meantime, I hope you've been having a good spring, a good year, and I hope your reading is going well. I hope you have some awesome books ready to read, and I'll see you next time.